So this is hopefully our final date prediction for the second and third fire signs of 1 Kings 18, which are 2 nuclear terrorist attacks on New York, Manhattan from the Hudson, and on Dartford from the Thames. They are a rising mushroom cloud from the sea of 1 Kings 18. They're also the fulfillment of Isaiah 30 verse 26, which says that there will be, well, verse 25 says there'll be streams from hills and rivers from mountains in the day of the big slaughter when the towers fall. Now 9/11 was the day of the little slaughter when towers fell. What's coming is the day of the big slaughter when the towers fall, which is a nuclear version of 9/11 basically. It says that the light of the sun will become 7 times as bright in that day, and the light of the moon will become as the light of the sun. And if the sun is 7 times as bright, that's 7 suns, and if the moon becomes like the sun, that's 8 suns. But the word used in Hebrew for sun is glowing, the glower. And 8 glowings, 8 glowers is Hanukkah, 8 candles. That's a cryptic statement that the day of the big slaughter will occur during Hanukkah. And we now have it occurring on Chislev 24/25, according to the BLC, the old biblical calendar of man, which is, Chislev 25 is the first day of Hanukkah. We're actually already in Hanukkah according to the Hebrew calendar. But the new date, we've arrived at it from various ways actually, but the simplest way to explain it is that we've had to change the second New Covenant Pentecost. We had it as running from Tishri 2 to Heshvan 21, Tishri 2 being Adam's birthday and Heshvan 21 being Jesus's. Adam was the first fruits and Jesus is the first ripe fruits, and a Pentecost count goes from first fruits day to first ripe fruits day. But every church has a Pentecost, every true church, because a Pentecost is the period between the appointment of a church and the beginning of its operation. For example, under Moses, when they left Egypt, they got out of Egypt, they left Ramesses on Nisan 15 and they got out of Egypt on Nisan 16. So they were kind of appointed by virtue of being outside of the land of Egypt. Actually, Attila was Nisan 18. So maybe that's when they were appointed and fully got out of Egypt. And then at the Pentecost on Sivan 7 at Mount Sinai, they agreed to enter into the law, and that's when the administration of Moses became operational. Likewise with the first Christian church, Jesus was resurrected and the temple of his church was rebuilt on the 3rd day, which was Nisan 16, which was First Fruits Day. The first fruits under law was always the first day of the week after the interposing Sabbath of cakes. So you have the Passover, then you have cakes, you have the first Sabbath in cakes, and then the day after that, first day of the week, is first fruits. In the case of Jesus' death, the weekly Sabbath coincided with the festival Sabbath of Nisan 15, 33 Nisan 15. So first fruits was Nisan 16. And that's when the church was appointed. And then 50 days later at the Pentecost, the administration got going with the gifts of the Spirit and 3,000 people baptized into the church and all the rest of it. And that's the Pentecost for the first New Covenant church, which Jesus started, which got corrupted and became the Roman Catholic Church and then became a false church because it sold out to Rome and became a harlot riding the beast, 7-headed beast of Rome. And then there are 3 other true churches, 2 in each presence, and they're 2 presences. And each church has its own Pentecost, although the 3rd true church was the Watchtower, which was again a 1NC church, and so it has the same Pentecost as the first true church had. But the second church was not a First New Covenant church, it was the church of Bilhah and Zilpah. If the first New Covenant is Leah, and the second New Covenant, which the Lord's Witness is the church of Rachel, then Bilhah and Zilpah, the 2 maidservants, and Paul ran there. The second true Christian church run by Paul was the church of those 2 covenants. So, to our church, which is the Lord's Witnesses, which is the church of the second New Covenant, you need all these covenants because, Jacob didn't have 1 wife, he had 4. And Abraham didn't have 1 wife, he had Hagar, who he had Ishmael with, he had Sarah, who he had Isaac with, and he had Keturah, who he had sons with, who was initially his slave girl, and then he married her. The only patriarch that had 1 wife, apart from Adam, What was that? Well, actually Adam, Noah and Isaac had one. But Jacob, who stands for Jesus, had 4. And also, the first new covenant is to be a king in the heavens. Well, you don't make a kingdom out of kings. You've got to have citizens, and it has an earthly part too. So there's kings on earth, there's kings in the heavens, there's citizens in earth and citizens in the heavens, there's administration on earth and administration in the heavens. And there's covenants for all these. So this church it's the church's second new covenant, and so there is a second new covenant first fruits and a second new covenant Pentecost. The first Christian church began when the law ended, and this church began when the law of the previous church, which was the Watchtower, true church, ended. And that was a greater tablet shattering day of Moses, because Moses shattered 2 tablets and there were 4 tablets made. And it's a tablet for a church because they're stones, these tablets of stone. To cut a long story short, this is covered in U271AQ, and our Pentecost runs generally from Tishri 2. Tablet shattering day is, he went up the mountain on the Pentecost, and 40 days later he came down and shattered the tablets. But the scriptures call it 40 days and 40 nights, so that can be 80 days, and it is 80 days. And you can take it from the late Pentecost rather than the regular Pentecost. And when you do that, you end up 110 days after the 1NC Pentecost. That's tablet shattering day. With Christianized Pentecost, they don't run off weekly Sabbaths, they run off virtualized Sabbaths or festival Sabbaths. First Sabbath after tablet shattering day calculated, the greater tablet shattering day is 40 plus 40 days after the late Pentecost rather than 40 days after the regular Pentecost. And that the first Sabbath after that is Tishri 1, which is the Feast of Trumpets, and the first day of the week after that Sabbath is Tishri 2, which is normally 2NC first fruits, and then the Pentecost is the 50th day inclusively thereafter, which is Heshvan 21. But in Zohar there's a problem, because the Zohar Pentecost runs from Ab 16 to Tishri 5, and so it would overlap with the 2NC Pentecost, which we didn't think was a problem until we realised that there are 100 prophets of Jehovah hidden in the cave in 1 Kings 18 by 50s. And also we realised that you shouldn't really be counting 2 things at the same time. But these prophets hidden by 50s in the cave, 150 goes in and comes out, another 50 goes in and comes out. They're not hidden by 52 or 53 or something. So you can't have them overlapping. It's a symbolism for successive Pentecost, not for overlapping Pentecosts. And likewise in 2 Kings 1 with the second 50, it says that the Hebrew says, and Ahaziah sent a following 50 to Elijah, and chief of 50. Clever use of words. It means following after Zohar, Pentecost, actually, which wasn't sent. And in the greater meaning is he sent it to him, so it's not Ahaziah sending it to Elijah, it's Elijah sending it to Ahaziah in the greater meaning, because the wording permits such a greater meaning, and God doesn't ambiguously word for no reason. Every ambiguity has power in the scriptures. For those reasons we decided we've got to have a non-overlapping 2NC count whilst in Zohar, only whilst in Zohar. So that means instead of starting on Tishri 2, we start on Tishri 6, because the Zohar Pentecost count ends on Tishri 5, and you can't be counting 2 Pentecosts at the same time. So you have to delay the 2NC Pentecost in the Zohar, whilst in Zohar, and whilst there is a Zohar Pentecost, for 4 days. So it runs from Tishri 6 to Heshvan 25. So the late Pentecost is Chislev 25, and that is the big day that 1 Kings 18, all the 50 counts refer to, and 2 Kings 1 refers to. So all the argumentation we had for the 2NC late Pentecost and the fire signs on that day or the day before still apply, but we've moved the 2NC Pentecost to be a non-overlapping version of it, which means it's 4 days forward. So instead of the date period being basically Chislev 21-22, we now have it as Chislev 24-25. The reason we put in 24 as well is that Haggai says that on the 24th of the 9th, set your heart from this day and forward. It's the day when the temple is established. We've set our heart on a lot of different 24ths of 9ths, but obviously the 24th of Chislev is the 24th day of the 9th month of the 7th reign or year of Jesus in the kingdom in 2015. but also there's the 24th festival of the 9th year of the contest, which would be this 2NC Pentecost, which was on Heshvan 25, and the late version is Chislev 25. So Chislev 24 and Chislev 25 are both really versions of the 24th of the 9th on which we should set our heart. So we've done that, and we've set our heart as that being the day that our chronology is established by a fire sign. Although, returning to Jericho, you're supposed to go around for 6 years, and then in the 7th year go around 7 times, not 8. And that would mean we'd need to finish our circumnavigations in Heshvan this year. Now it was Heshvan 22 when we made the prediction that there'd be a fire sign on or before Chislev 25, which still holds true. But I must give you another beautiful thing we worked out recently. We were looking at the route they took in the wilderness, and it's totally laid out in Numbers 33. They camped in 41 places in the wilderness. They pulled up stakes 41 times and camped 41 times in the wilderness. And people think they walked round for 40 years in circles. They didn't. They walked round for 2 years in circles, and they stopped in Kadesh for 38 years. And that's all covered in U364, and there's a very good Canadian site which covers it, and we got a lot of the material from that site, which is linked from Understanding 364. But here's the big deal. It says they pulled up stakes from the Red Sea, and then they pitched tent at the next place, and then they pulled up stakes from there, and then they pitched tent at the next place, and it just repeats itself pretty much 41 times. When that happens, there's a huge hint that there's a greater meaning to pulling up stakes and pitching tent, making another encampment. And it says that the sons of Israel did this 41 times. Now there are 13 sons of Israel, 12 tribes plus Levi, which isn't registered amongst them, but is nonetheless a son. So there are actually 13 tribes, 1 unregistered tribe and 12 registered tribes, and 13 sons. And if 13 sons make 41 camps, then a son is making a camp 533 times. And the total number of main predictions plus sub-predictions that we have done is 402 plus 124. That's how many we've got records of having done. But I overwrote between 2 and 10 of the sub-predictions before I decided to keep them. So we have actually done something like 533 predictions. Because look, this is what the Jews did. They were led around the wilderness by a pillar of fire and cloud, and it would reside over the tabernacle, and when it moved, they up stake and followed the cloud, and when it stopped, they stopped where the cloud stopped. So they were led by a pillar of fire and cloud geographically through a physical wilderness, and they did that for 40 years, whereas this church has been led for 40 months by a pillar of fire and cloud. But we haven't been led geographically or in space, we've been led in time. And what we do every time we get it wrong is we dismantle our chronology and we rebuild it for our next prediction, which is precisely what the Jews did with their camp. Physically and spatially, we do it temporally. Anybody wants to get in the promised land, you're going to have 40 years or 40 months of this sort of thing. And our 40 months started with our appointment over Zoar Ab 16, or possibly with our finish of our installation as non-Adamic priests, being able to baptize people into non-Adamic bodies, which was 7 whole days inclusively after Ab 16, which is Ab 22. So we would have started our wilderness penalty either Ab 16 or Ab 23. And it would last till 14 months till Chislev 16. Now on Chislev 17, we got this understanding of the 533 predictions and sub-predictions we had to make, being predicted by the geographical encampments of the sons of Israel, predicting our chronological encampments, or constructions, should I say, which is a lovely understanding. On the 22nd of Chislev, at the end of the 40 months of wilderness, map 23, 2012, we got the present prediction of the non-overlapping 2NC Pentecost, late 2NC Pentecost, which is 25th and the 24th of Haggai. Also Daniel 10, which says that Daniel sees a vision on the 24th of the month of this church, basically. In other words, our wilderness, we shouldn't have to do any more of this. If the wilderness period has ended, then the cloud isn't going to move anymore, because it's a wilderness cloud. The cloud didn't go into the promised land. So I think our wilderness period ended on Chislev 22, which was a couple of days ago. And hopefully we've now got this right. I say that not because we want there to be a nuclear terrorist attack. We don't. but it's going to occur, and when it does, we want to get the date right so we can make something positive out of it. Perhaps people will listen to our moral sustainability arguments when they see the result of not listening. Anyway, thank you for listening to this, and hopefully it's my final second and third fire sign prediction.